Hey guys, this is Drax. I hope you all had a great time over Christmas. I'm back with another how-to guide, and this time we'll be looking at how to dominate with Boba Fett. So Boba Fett started life as an unaltered clone on Kamino. Unaltered meaning he didn't grow as fast as the others, so would age like a normal human. This was at his father's request, the man he was cloned from. And of course we know this to be Jango Fett, who was later killed by Mace Windu. Boba Fett grew on his father's legacy, in a way surpassing him to become one of the most renowned bounty hunters in the galaxy. In Star Wars Battlefront 2, Boba Fett has 3 abilities, and these are Concussion Rocket, For the Hunt and Rocket Barrage. He does of course have his trusty jetpack and his weapon of choice, the EE-3 blaster rifle. So starting with the first ability, Concussion Rocket. Here Boba Fett fires a single rocket, dazing enemies caught in the blast. This will leave them confused and open to attacks. A great option for offense, as you flying fire this off and then pick off anyone who's left in a concussed state. Normally once it hits, this one will disorientate enemies enough to ruin their aim. Use this also when escaping to take less damage. I use this mostly as my prep attack just before going in to hit a large group with the rocket barrage, minimizing damage and maximizing kills. The next ability is For the Hunt. Here enemies are revealed around Boba Fett for a short period of time, during which Boba disappears from the radar and can utilize unlimited jetpack fuel. This central ability is more important than people seem to realize. Boba here gains the upper hand in 3 ways. He can see all enemies around him, this makes them easy to pick off. He disappears from the radar, meaning you can gain the element of surprise, enemies can't see where you're coming from, and he gains the unlimited jetpack fuel for the duration of the ability. Without doubt, the most important thing to do with Boba Fett is stay in the air. Most of the time this will keep you free from danger, whilst also giving you a view to see and affect everything going on below. When you run out of fuel and drop to the ground, then he's more likely to take damage. So with For the Hunt, make sure to use that unlimited jetpack fuel at the right time. I find if you do run out of fuel and then trigger this ability, the unlimited supply does not work. In fact, it will stop the normal recharge. To get this one to work, you need a little bit of fuel in the tank before you trigger it. Quite often that being the best time when you have only a little bit of fuel, as enemies may try to attack you and you need to get some distance. There are obvious offensive capabilities with this one, but also don't be afraid to use it defensively if you need to. Remember, you will disappear from radars, making you harder to follow, and with the unlimited fuel you should be able to get away. Maybe find somewhere up high where you can regen some health. So then we have the final ability, and this is the Rocket Barrage. One of the most powerful attacks in game when teamed with a star card. The description reads, a hail of small rockets is launched from Boba Fett's gauntlet. This decimates enemies with both direct and blast damage as long as you remain accurate. With this one I find it best to get over your opponent and fire down onto them. Too far away and you'll probably miss out some potential damage though, so you want to be in fairly close to maximize the damage. I stay hovering around 15 meters above any targets. That way they normally struggle to hit me, but I can still hit them enough. As said before, for larger groups, combining the Concussion Rocket and Rocket Barrage is a great option, as you can daze all your enemies and destroy them with little to no damage taken in return. This one can feel a bit weak at first, but once combined with the intense barrage card, it really is a strong ability. This is definitely Boba Fett's main damage dealing attack, and should be used anytime there are too many enemies to face with just the EE-3. You also want to bring this one out anytime there are heroes on the scene. It's your best attack and he doesn't really have anything that does big damage otherwise. So to win against heroes, the Rocket Barrage will be your go-to ability. I'll talk about this one a bit more with those star cards shortly, but first a few thoughts on the EE-3 blaster. I've heard a few comments of people not liking this one, saying it's too weak against heroes. Well, I personally haven't had that experience with this weapon. Once again, my top recommendation is to try and hit headshots consistently. The difference in damage is highly noticeable. Instead of chipping away at say heroes, only relying on Rocket Barrage to do any decent damage, headshots will multiply the weapon's damage and take good chunks out of their health. It's quite an accurate weapon at medium range, and because of the burst it's a decent one to use in flight. Instead of just flying around like you normally would, maybe holding down the jetpack button, tapping it whilst firing the EE-3 will make it easier to land shots. Remaining accurate in flight I would say is essential if you want to dominate with Boba Fett. So if you are struggling with this, my advice would be to go into arcade and practice hovering and firing for a while. Once you get good at it, you'll notice a big improvement in the overall damage you can output in multiplayer. So now let's move on to the star cards, and after a fair bit of testing, here's my favourite 4. The first one has got to be the Intense Barrage card. At top tier, this gives you an additional 4 rockets per barrage, upping the output damage by quite an amount. This means you can deal with heroes and larger groups of enemies much easier. The next card I decided on was Fuel Efficiency. This one makes fuel burn slower while flying. I did also try out Quick Refill, but found staying in the air longer instead of taking refill breaks all the time to be my preference. When you are in the air, you can avoid a lot of damage, so I think this one works really well. And finally, I chose the Information Sharing card. I'm big on team play, and this one helps everyone out a bit whilst using the For the Hunt ability, revealing the location of enemies to all friendlies nearby for a maximum of 50% of the ability's duration. This helps you and your team attack and defend together. I think some people might say, why not the Death from Above card? Well, in my opinion, it's okay, but only gives you that reduction when using Rocket Barrage. If it affected you when you were flying all the time, then I would of course go with that one, but it doesn't. It only gives you the reduction of damage during the ability use, which is quite a short amount of time, so I stick with Information Sharing as I believe it to be more useful. If playing heroes versus villains though, I then switch this one out to Anti-Hero Rockets. At top tier, this will give each rocket a bonus damage of 20 on heroes. When combined with the Intense Barrage card, this absolutely melts the health of any hero. They simply get decimated. Some cards have been nerfed a bit from their original state as they were way too strong, but still, even with the nerfs, this combination remains deadly. You could even run this card all the time in Galactic Assault. Since the main threat Boba faces is other heroes, it's going to be a handy card. But anyway, that is the cards I use for Boba Fett. I know you guys might have some different combinations that work well for you. These are just my recommendations to anyone who has been struggling to find something that works. So now let's talk about tactics. First, jetpack use. Like the Jump Troopers, Boba Fett has the ability to dodge or move a bit quicker when on the ground via short bursts from his jetpack. This is done via the same button you use for rolling. If you do run out of fuel or have to fight inside, this dodge or dash ability is going to be very important to avoid damage. Get the timing right to mainly dodge lightsabers, but also anything else that comes your way. On the thought of lightsabers, these wreck Boba Fett. Once hit, you normally can't just fly off to avoid taking any more damage, as they usually just hit you again and you remain on the ground. So if you do get hit, remember to dodge first. Get some space, then fly off once you have the fuel to do so. When in the air, Boba also has to watch out for a few blaster using heroes, and the main ones are Leia, Lando, Chewie and Finn. If you are fighting Leia, engage at close range, otherwise she will use that alternate fire which heat seeks at range. Lando's sharp shot ability will take you out of the air when close, so you want to go a bit further away against him. Chewie's Furious Bowcaster seems to hit Boba Fett at all ranges, but is definitely easier to deal with at range. And finally we have Finn, who has the Aimbot Deadeye ability, so if you all of a sudden start taking a ton of damage, then that is probably Finn and you need to get some distance. If there is a chance you will be shot out of the air, try to make sure you have a safe place to crash. Kamino is one of those places where I've been flying along, got shot from across the map, probably by Leia, and ended up in the water. You usually fly backwards when hit, so try to make sure you have solid ground behind you. Boba Fett has an interesting melee attack, and this comes in the form of his flamethrower. It's a shame we don't get to see this one otherwise, but at least it's there for some use. If someone is a bit too close, use the melee button to put some heat on them. Perhaps a lightsaber user who has managed to jam you in a corner. This is a short blast that looks to 2-hit normal soldiers, dealing decent damage. I wouldn't advise using this one too often though, you generally don't want to be that close to any enemies. I personally think it would be great if we could continually use the flamethrower, say if we held down the melee button, but sadly this isn't implemented at the moment. Maybe something DICE could do in the future to help Boba Fett out more in those cramped areas on certain maps. And the final tip is to make use of the high ground. Boba Fett is able to reach places on the maps that no one else can. You can use this for an advantage in two ways. This can be a place to fire from, or you can use it as a safe point to regen fuel at. Get used to the maps, learn about the high spots, and I think you will really benefit as you can stay up high all the time, evading damage and making yourself a menace. But anyway guys, that is the tips and guide right there. In conclusion, Boba Fett lives up to the Fett name. He's a deadly bounty hunter with all the abilities and star cards to both help his team and destroy his enemies. as Boba says,
"They will never know what hit them."
and this is probably the best way to play him. Use for the hunt to get in undetected whilst flying through the air, disorientate them with a concussion rocket, and deal the damage with the rocket barrage. Stay on the move whilst remaining accurate, and you'll dominate the Battlefront with Boba Fett. So I hope you have all enjoyed this one. I have a few other guides on the list, including Phasma, Rey and Palpatine at the moment, so you should see them in the near future. I just wanted to say a big thanks to everyone who has joined the channel. Over 6,000 of you now, a big welcome to all the new guys. I'm glad you are finding these helpful, and I'll keep making them as long as you do. Also have some plans for a few different vids on the channel in the near future, some of my top plays, a few funny moments, and of course a few live streams. But for now, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.